That's how it began, quiet, ordinary, and wrong in ways I couldn't name. I wasn't supposed to notice her. She was older, late 40s maybe, the kind of woman who carried silence like perfume. I'd only known her in passing, just a neighbor, the one who rarely left her front porch unless it was late in the evening, when most people were already inside. The first time we spoke was because of the rain. Heavy, sudden, relentless, the kind that makes gutters overflow and knocks branches against windows. I was coming back from the corner store with a bag of bread under my shirt, half drenched, when I saw her wrestling with a loose shutter on her porch. "Need a hand?" I shouted over the storm. She turned, hair clinging damp to her cheek, eyes sharp but tired. She should have said no. Most people do. But she stepped back, giving me space. "If you don't mind," she said, almost too softly to hear. I climbed the porch and held the shutter in place while she fastened it back. My shoulder brushed against hers once, by accident. Still, I caught the way she went still, the way her fingers faltered on the screw before tightening again. After, we stood in the doorway, both dripping water onto the wooden floor. She glanced at me, hesitant, like she wanted to say something but didn't. Instead, she crossed her arms, defensive. "You're impossible," she muttered, shaking her head. "Yet you're still here," I said before I could stop myself. Came out too easy, too close to teasing. Her eyes flicked to mine. Sharp, then softer, then gone as she looked away. We didn't talk about it. She offered me tea, as if that exchange never happened. I followed her into the kitchen anyway, where the lights hummed faintly and the air smelled faintly of lemon polish. The house felt too quiet. Not empty, not full, just quiet. Every sound, every breath seemed to matter more than it should. I sat at the small table while she boiled water, her back turned. I studied the way her hands moved, deliberate but slightly tense. The way she paused once, pressing her palm against the counter as if steadying herself. I didn't say anything. I was afraid I'd say too much. When she finally set the cup in front of me, her hand lingered on the table, just close enough that I could see the faint tremor in her fingers. I wanted to reach out. I didn't. Instead, I said something stupid. "You don't usually talk to people, do you?" She stiffened, half sat, then finally eased into the chair across from me. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered. My chest tightened. The words hung there, fragile and unfinished. "Neither should I replied. And for a moment we just sat, steam rising between us, silence stretching like a wire pulled too tight. She didn't look at me, not at first. But when she finally did, it was different. Not neighbor to neighbor. Not stranger to stranger. Something else. I don't know who moved first. Maybe neither of us did. Maybe it was just the air shifting, the storm outside pressing closer, forcing us to fill the space between. Her sleeve brushed mine, so light it could have been nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Not to me. Her lips parted, like she was about to speak. Instead, she only looked at me, eyes lingering too long. Long enough that I knew we'd already crossed a line we weren't ready to name. And then, she drew her hand back suddenly, almost knocking the cup. "Go," she said. But her voice wasn't steady. I stood, but I didn't leave. Not yet. Not until I heard her whisper, barely audible under the storm. "Stay." I should have left that night. Any normal person would have. But normal never seemed to stick when it came to her. She said stay like it wasn't a choice. Like she was testing both of us. So I sat back down, pretending it was casual, pretending my heart wasn't pounding loud enough to drown out the rain. She avoided my eyes at first, busying herself with the tea, folding a napkin, smoothing her sleeve. Every movement felt unnecessary, like she was buying herself time. Finally, she said, "I don't usually let people in." I didn't know if she meant her house, her life, or just this moment. Probably all three. The truth was, I shouldn't have been there either. Not because of her age, though that was part of it. But because she carried something heavier, something she didn't want me to see. You just got out of something? I said before I could stop myself. Her head snapped up. What makes you say that? I shrugged, trying to mask how closely I'd been watching. The way you keep checking your phone, like you're waiting for a message that won't come. Her lips pressed tight, and for a moment I thought she'd tell me to get out. Instead, she laughed, soft, broken. You notice too much. I can't help it, I admitted. Her face shifted just slightly. The kind of look people give when they want to believe you, but don't trust themselves to. She set the phone down on the table, screen face down, and leaned back. I was married, she said finally, voice steady but quiet. 20 years. Ended 6 months ago. He left. And well. She gestured vaguely at the silence around us. The house too tidy, too still. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. The way her thumb brushed over the edge of the table. Restless. The way she avoided my eyes again. I shouldn't be telling you this, she said. You already did, I answered, half smiling. That earned me the smallest curve of her lips before she looked away again. The storm outside slowed, rain tapping lighter against the glass. Inside, the silence grew heavier, pressing between us. My eyes kept drifting to her hand, resting so close to mine I could have reached without thinking. But I did think. Too much. Felt dangerous. Not because she was older, not because she was broken open in front of me, but because I wanted to step into that brokenness, wanted to see what would happen if I stayed. She exhaled, long and low, then finally met my gaze. You're too young for this, she said, but her voice wavered. Maybe, I said, but I'm still here. Something flickered across her face. Fear, want, both. She reached for her cup, but her hand trembled, fingers brushing my wrist as she set it down again. Not accidental this time. Stay a little longer, she whispered. My throat tightened. The words I almost said, I want to, caught there, dangerous, waiting, and I knew the night wasn't over. Not yet. The storm had settled into a steady drizzle by the time I realized how late it was. The kitchen clock ticked softly above us, but neither of us moved. She had asked me to stay longer, and I had, without question. I tried to act like it was nothing, sipping tea gone cold, tracing the rim of the cup. But every time I looked up, her eyes were already on me. It was subtle, fleeting, but it was there, and it pinned me in place more than any words could. At some point, she reached for the phone she'd turned face down earlier. She didn't unlock it, just held it in her hand, turning it over and over. He used to call at night, she murmured. Never for long, just to remind me I wasn't alone. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Her thumb hovered over the screen like muscle memory, but she didn't press it. She set the phone back down and pushed it away. It's strange, she whispered. I don't miss him anymore. I miss the idea of not being invisible. The words cut through me, sharper than I expected. She didn't look at me, but I saw the wet shine at the edge of her lashes. Without thinking, I reached across the table. My fingers brushed hers, light, tentative. I should have pulled back. I didn't. She didn't either. The air shifted. My chest tightened. We sat like that, hands barely touching, until the shrill ring of her phone split the moment in half. We both jerked, startled. She grabbed the phone, saw the name flash across the screen, and froze. Her jaw clenched, lips pressed tight. Do you need to? I started. No, she hit decline without hesitation, then set the phone back down, harder this time. The silence that followed wasn't the same. It was heavier, charged, like the room itself knew we'd just crossed into something we couldn't undo. I leaned back, trying to create space, to remember the reasons I shouldn't be here. She was older. She was vulnerable. This was dangerous for both of us. I told myself to leave, to stand up and walk out before the line blurred completely. But then she stood first. Not to push me away, not to end this. She walked around the table, slow, deliberate, and stopped at my side. My breath caught. She rested her hand on the back of my chair, close enough that her sleeve brushed against my shoulder, close enough that I felt the warmth of her presence against my skin. "This is wrong," she said softly. "I know," I whispered back. Her eyes searched mine, as if waiting for me to break first, to admit what we both felt but hadn't said. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But all I managed was her name on my lips, barely spoken, almost lost in the quiet. She tilted her head, just enough to close the space between us. Her hand slipped down, brushing against my arm, light, deliberate. And in that heartbeat, with the storm fading outside and the world narrowing to just the two of us, I couldn't tell anymore if we were still holding back, or about to fall. I should have stood up. I should have left when her hand brushed mine, when her voice cracked on the words, "This is wrong." But instead I stayed, and so did she. The kitchen felt smaller than it had a moment ago. The air was thick, too warm, like the storm had crept inside with us. She hadn't moved her hand from my arm, and I hadn't moved away. Finally, she broke the silence. "Do you know what people would say?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her, shiny, afraid. "Yes. And you don't care?" I swallowed hard. "Not about them." She looked at me then, really looked, as if searching for the boy she thought she knew and finding someone else instead. For a long beat, she didn't speak. Then, with a bitter half-laugh, she whispered, "You're too young to know what you want." "Then tell me what I want." I shot back. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She pressed her fingers to her temple, shaking her head, as though I'd pushed too close to something she didn't want to admit. "You don't understand," she said, softer this time. "I spent years being needed by someone who never really saw me. And now you—" She stopped herself, biting the inside of her cheek. "Now me what?" I pressed, leaning forward. Her hand tightened on the back of my chair. For a second, I thought she'd pull away. Instead, she whispered, "Now you look at me like I matter." Her confession hit harder than I expected. It wasn't about attraction, not really. It was about being seen, about being remembered when she'd almost convinced herself she'd disappeared. I felt my throat tighten. "You do matter. More than you think." Her eyes locked on mine then, unblinking, desperate. And in that look was everything we hadn't said. Everything we were both terrified to say. The silence between us stretched too long, every second heavy, trembling. "Tell me to leave," I said finally. My voice shook despite my effort to keep it steady. She didn't. "Tell me this is nothing." I tried again. Her hand slipped from the chair and down my arm, resting just above my wrist. Her touch was light, but it burned through me like fire. "This isn't nothing," she whispered. I froze, breath caught somewhere between hope and fear. The words echoed in my head, dangerous and undeniable. For the first time, neither of us had anywhere left to hide. The rain outside had stopped completely, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of our uneven breathing. Her fingers tightened around my wrist. She didn't let go. And then she asked, barely above a breath, "What happens if we don't stop?" The room went still. The world went still. And I had no answer. Not yet. Her question, "What happens if we don't stop?" still hung in the air when the sound broke it. A soft knock at the front door. We both stiffened. She pulled her hand back like the touch had burned her. I stood quickly, almost too quickly, chair legs scraping against the tile. She didn't move right away. Whoever it was knocked again, firmer this time. She began, but her voice faltered. She finally walked to the door, her steps deliberate, her back straighter than before. Through the frosted glass, I saw a shadow, tall, impatient. When she opened the door, the man standing there froze as soon as he saw me. He wasn't young, maybe mid-50s, with lines at the corners of his eyes. His gaze shifted between her and me, suspicion already alive in the silence. Her voice was too calm when she spoke. "What are you doing here?" The man didn't answer her first. He looked at me instead. "Who's this?" I shifted, suddenly aware of how out of place I must have seemed. Standing in her kitchen at this hour with the storm just past. She didn't flinch. "A neighbor." He helped with the shutters. The man's jaw tightened, but he let it go for now. "We need to talk," he said, voice clipped. Something in her expression cracked, but only for a second. "Not tonight." He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "It can't wait. You owe me that much." The word "oh" cut through me, though I didn't know why. She looked shaken, but she stepped outside, pulling the door nearly shut behind her. I stayed frozen in the kitchen, listening to the muffled exchange. Their voices rose, then softened, then rose again. And then I heard it, my name. I moved closer, pulse hammering. Through the narrow gap, I heard him say, "He doesn't know, does he?" Her reply was too low to catch. The man's voice sharpened. "He deserves to. Or maybe I'll tell him myself." The door creaked open wider. She slipped back inside, her face pale. The man stayed on the porch, pacing like he was deciding whether to leave. I stared at her. "What don't I know?" She froze, eyes darting toward the door, then back to me. Her lips parted, but no words came. "Tell me." I pressed louder this time. The man on the porch scoffed. "Ask her about her son." The words hit like glass shattering. I looked at her, searching, demanding. She shook her head, finally speaking. "It's not what you think." But her voice cracked, betraying her. In that moment, I didn't know if the floor had just been pulled out from under me, or if we were standing on something we were never supposed to touch in the first place. Her hand reached for mine again, trembling. "Please," she whispered. "Don't leave. Not yet." And I had to decide. Did I want the truth or her? Her fingers trembled against mine, but I didn't pull away. Not yet. Not until I understood. "What did he mean?" I asked, quieter this time, though the weight behind it was heavier than before. Her eyes darted to the door where the man had stood only minutes ago. He was gone now, but his words still clung to the air. She closed her eyes, exhaled shakily, then opened them again. "I had a son," she said. Her voice cracked on the word "had." "He was your age. A little older, maybe." She stopped, pressing her lips together like the rest of the sentence might break her. I swallowed, throat dry. The pieces started clicking together. The loneliness in her house, the way she flinched at certain questions, the restless silence she carried. "I lost him," she whispered. "Years ago. An accident. Since then, I can't look at boys your age without." She broke off again, shaking her head. "It's not fair. To you. To me. To anyone." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they pushed me away, but because they made everything else make sense. The hesitation. The way she lingered and pulled back at the same time. She wasn't just afraid of me. She was afraid of remembering him. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. "I'm not him." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I know. That's the problem." Silence stretched between us, raw and unsteady. For once, I didn't try to fill it. I just let it sit heavy until she finally spoke again. "When you're here, I feel alive again. Like maybe I didn't vanish with him. But it scares me. Because the moment I let you in, I remember what it's like to lose." Her honesty cut through every excuse I'd been making in my head. This wasn't about right or wrong anymore. It was about whether we could survive the weight of what she carried. I reached across the table, not tentative this time. I took her hand fully, holding it between both of mine. "I can't promise I won't hurt you. I can't promise this won't end badly. But I can promise I'm not leaving just because it's hard." Tears slid down her cheeks, but she didn't pull away. She gripped my hand back, tighter than I expected, like she was afraid I might disappear. For the first time, she let herself meet my gaze without flinching. No walls. No excuses. Just two people standing on the edge of something fragile and dangerous, deciding whether to step forward. Finally, she nodded, small, almost imperceptible, but enough. Then stay, she whispered. I squeezed her hand once, steady. I will. The storm had ended hours ago, but in that moment, with her hand in mine, it felt like something new had just begun. The morning came quietly. No storm, no interruption. Just pale light slipping through the kitchen curtains. The world outside looked washed clean, as if the rain had carried away more than leaves and dust. We were still at the table, our hands resting together between us. Neither of us had slept, but neither of us felt tired. It wasn't the silence of strangers anymore. It was something steadier, earned. I studied her face in the early light. The guardedness was still there, but softer now, like the edges had finally dulled. For the first time since I'd met her, she didn't look like she was holding her breath. She broke the quiet. You should know. I haven't let anyone sit in this kitchen for years. I smiled faintly. Guess I'm impossible. Her lips curved, almost against her will. Yes, but you're still here, and that mattered more than anything either of us could say outright. The man from the night before, her past, her grief, her son. None of it vanished. It never could. But the difference now was that she wasn't carrying it alone. And maybe I wasn't either. For me, everything had shifted too. I'd walked into her house a neighbor, a stranger with good intentions and too much curiosity. I was leaving with something heavier, sharper. The understanding that connection isn't about perfect timing or the approval of others. Sometimes it's just two people daring to be seen when it's easier to stay hidden. She squeezed my hand once before letting go, standing slowly. I don't know where this goes, she admitted. I can't promise it won't hurt. I stood too, close enough that the air between us felt charged again. I'm not asking for promises, just a chance. Her eyes lingered on mine, searching, measuring. Then she nodded, small but certain. Then we'll take it one day at a time. That was enough. More than enough. Because in the end, what mattered wasn't whether the world outside would understand us, or whether our differences could be wrapped in neat explanations. What mattered was the look in her eyes when she realized she wasn't invisible anymore. What mattered was the way my chest finally felt steady when I knew she wanted me to stay. Some stories end with certainty, with everything tied in a bow. Ours didn't. Ours ended with something quieter but stronger, two people willing to carry both the risk and the possibility of being known. And sometimes that's all love really asks for.